And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Dawson, and I'm here joined today by none other than co-host and brother, Chris Dawson. What's going on today?
Fantastic. Excited to talk college football as always. We're in the heart of June, which means recruiting is the main focus. And I love recruiting more than anybody else. But I want to talk about this year. I want some new news. I want SEC media days. I want fall camp to be here as soon as possible. You know what I mean?
I do too. We can only sit here in June and really just talk about what we think is going to happen in August. A lot of crazy official visits. Stories this weekend. Virginia Tech landed a big linebacker, 4-star Gabriel Williams. Love that for our guy Brent Pry. Guy actually continues to stack defensive talent. I'm gonna give him
He's
credit.
got a nice recruiting class right now. Joins a good quarterback. They got committed.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some rumors that they're not done right there. That they're not done. Coming. Any other notes about recruiting that you could think of? Little
Well, on a
nuggets.
national level, I'll say this, personal bias, Minnesota Summer Splash had a heck of a weekend, right? They came out of there with 4 recruits. All 4 of those guys, all 3 of them that didn't end up committing. No surprise there. They were going to finish their official visits. They're going to circle back, and Minnesota will be right there with it. I think Georgia is continuing to just stack good talent already.
Piling
in
it on.
June.
They are piling it on. It's crazy.
For our Big Ten folks, Ohio State starting to make a move, and so is Michigan. And it's nice to see Michigan start recruiting at an elite level. I mean, they've always been in that 15 range, but they need to be up in the top 7, top 6 to start making, pushes for that college football playoff wins that they want to.
I agree. All right. Well, enough about recruiting. But there'll be plenty of time to talk recruiting because that's pretty much all we have to talk about up until SEC media days. Today, we're gonna start with the mailbag question today. We're gonna get after it that way, and then after that, we have something special for you guys. We're gonna do college quarterback fantasy draft. Yep. CD and I are going toe to toe, just like we did second year coaches these past couple episodes. We're going toe to toe college quarterbacks. We're gonna get to draft one from each Power 5 conference, and then we get one alternate G5 player. We're also gonna talk about some sleepers, maybe guys that we didn't pick that we actually are looking for to having a good season. That just maybe didn't crack the top 2 in that conference.
Yeah, guys, if you're in a dynasty league, if those existed in college football, that you'd want to stash for your year for the coming years. Maybe not this year. Well, they won't be a star, but right now they're not a star. But we're gonna see them continue to progress and make some improvement after, new situations or wherever they ended up.
Or if you got an extra bench spot, right? I mean, but let's be real. There's so many quarterbacks in college football. Like you're probably doing just fine with whoever you get. All right. But let's start with our mailbag question. Thank you, Max, for submitting our mailbag question today. Max says, what first-year head coach do you think will have the most success? Now, that was sent to our Gmail, the Redshirt Sophomore at gmail.com. So send in your mailbag question, just like Max did right here. And thanks for the question. So I'm just going to start with you, Chris. Let's how about this? How about we have a guy that we think is going to exceed expectations and a guy that we don't think is going to meet expectations. So let's look at it over under win totals. Okay. Give me a coach that you think is going to soar over his win total that's set for him this year.
I'll start with my guy. I think it's gonna be Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And I know
I was right there. He was right there on my list.
What's crazy is if you remember, you rewind back to, I want to say January or maybe late December, there was a lot of flack that Auburn got for hiring him, more so off the field results. I mean, but it's college football, okay? We love a good redemption story. we
love going to, yep. He was in a quote unquote coaching rehab over there at Liberty.
If you can coach quarterbacks well and develop them, you're gonna be able to find your way back into college football. Look at Bobby Petrino, look at Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, and now
Kendall Briles,
and now Hugh Freeze. Okay, but all jokes aside, I think what he did, he hit the ground running in the transfer portal, and they kind of quietly made their way into a really, really good recruiting class, a transfer portal class. They got some impact guys offensively that I love, and not necessarily at flashy positions, although they did get some good wide receivers. They got the guy from Ohio State. They brought in a couple other guys. Um, that can have depth finally there, which they haven't had in a long time. But it's really on the offensive line and starting with two tackles that they love from Tulsa, Dylan Wade, and then Gunnar Britton from Western Kentucky. Um, and I think that, and they got brought in the center from Eastern Carolina, Avery Jones, and
Very
another interior guy.
highly rated out of the transfer portal. Originally, smoke was he was going to Illinois. Last second, committed to Auburn. That was devastating for Illinois. That was devastating for the Illinois team.
All three of those guys I just mentioned, very highly rated, very highly rating offensive lineman. They brought another interior guy that's going to be probably that piece for them there. But, and they also brought in Rivaldo Fairweather, the tight end from Florida International. And you're going to say, okay, what's a tight end going to do for, Auburn? It's from Florida International. Can't be that good. Not true. The guy's a freaky athlete. A lot of people wanted him. This was early in the process. That was their first big recruiting win with Hugh Freeze in there. And so it's exciting. And they also defensively, they brought in some guys, notably Justin Rogers from Kentucky. They beat out LSU and Bama for. He used to be offensive lineman turned defensive lineman. And apparently word out of spring is he fits that new system really, really well. They're very excited for him. And then kind of later in the process, they got Peyton Thorne from Michigan State. And say what you want about him. It's not a bad. This is not quite on the level of Zach Calzada that Calzada's was, but he raises the floor. Yeah, he raises the floor of your quarterback room, especially with a guy like Robbie Ashford, who's
I get that.
With his play style is probably injury prone. And it's what was April? Like you're not gonna have April, May. You're not gonna have good quarterbacks on the board. Just ask Bama how that's going, trying to find a transport a quarterback. So I think it'll be interesting to see. That all they got to do is win 7 games. Okay, you're looking at 4 out of conference: UMass, California, Samford, New Mexico State. That's got to be 4-0. And then your crossover game is Georgia always, so you can chalk that up. But Vanderbilt is your other crossover, right? That's got to be a win. That's got to be number 5. And then all you got to do is find 2 more games. You're looking at Mississippi State and Ole Miss both at home. And then and if you don't win both of those, you got a chance at LSU, at A&M, at Arkansas. All going to be very, very tough. But then you got, let's say you're 6-5 going into that last week 13. You get home at Bama, home versus Bama, and we
know Hugh Freeze. We know
Hugh Freeze at home against Bama.
Yep.
Jordan Hare is going to be, crazy. So I think 6.5 is a good line. But I just loved over. What say you?
I think that's great for all of the exact reasons that you said. You went perfectly in depth. I think now Payne Thorne's not great, in my opinion. I think he's serviceable though, and I think Hugh Freeze is going to dial up some guys that are open. So I think that they might surprise some people this year. Definitely not someone that I'm looking forward to playing as a Texas A&M fan. We get him at home though, thankfully, which is nice. So, all right. Anyways, my pick. Over. We kind of alluded to this team, Liberty. Maybe Jamie Chadwell over 8.5. That's a high line. That's a high line. But so Liberty was pretty dang good last year. They beat Arkansas, okay, and basically forced Arkansas to not hit their over on the season win total, which I was pretty devastated about. But their quarterback Jonathan Bennett, he hasn't looked great there. That's fine, okay. But what does Jamie Chadwell know about quarterbacks? Apparently everything, because he makes it look very, very easy. Grayson McCall was an absolute standout at Coastal Carolina when he was there. If he can get Jonathan Bennett in rhythm, he can dial up some easy plays. They have the talent there at Liberty as well. I mean, they can rattle off some wins. And check out this schedule, all right? So they just moved into the Conference USA as well. So honestly, from independent to Conference USA, that's an easier schedule for them. They get Bowling Green at home, New Mexico State, Buffalo, FIU, Sam Houston State. Where do you see a loss there in the first 5 games? You don't see one. Then they get Jacksonville State, who's first year in Division I football. I mean, they get them on the road, but come on, that's another win. Middle Tennessee State could be a tough game. Western Kentucky on the road, that's a tough game. But then Louisiana Tech, spoilers for Bulldog fans, they're not that good. They're not that good. And they weren't that good last year. I'm sorry. Old Dominion at home, UMass and UTEP. I can find 9 games in there easily. I think he might even just clear that. I think they might make a solid bowl game in his first year. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of momentum for Jamie Chadwell. I really, really, really like him as a coach, and I think 8.5 is a good line. I think 9 is a better line. So give me over 8.5 for Jamie Chadwell. You can get it at 9 some places too. I think DraftKings is at 9, but I think at FanDuel he's at 8.5. So, you want to get on it early, get on it now. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, what's crazy to me, the most exciting thing about it is you have a guy, notable coach like Jamie Chadwell, what he did the last 3 years at Coastal Carolina, nothing short of elite, right? I think COVID, they were incredible, right? Last year they won 10 plus games. This year I think they had 9. I mean, you're looking at almost 10 wins a game, a season, which is really, really good for a school like Coastal Carolina. And then Liberty came and just dropped the bag, $4 million a year for a group of 5 school to pay. It's a lot, to say the least, but it's cool seeing a notable guy go from G5 program to G5 program and keep the the G5 like football up. So I think it's interesting. I'm excited to see what they can do there. I think joining conference, like you said, is good for them. So yeah.
Grayson McCall, 78 touchdowns to 8 interceptions for his career. That is ridiculous, and that has a lot to do with Jamie Chadwell. All right, next one. Oh, who is your smelly, stinky snoozer of a first-year coach? Who's it gonna be?
My mom and uncle and aunt and everyone else that's a
Oh boy.
Boilermaker in this family we have is gonna be upset. I'm gonna say Ryan Walters. And it's not that I don't like Ryan Walters. I don't love him, but it's not that I don't like him. I just think he's put in a tough situation. I think what Jeff Brom did at Purdue was pretty impressive, actually, but it took him a while to build up to that. And then he kind of peaked this past year, somehow winning the West. Okay. But they did, and they made it there. And, they gave Michigan a run for maybe a half or so. And then he left, and he took some people with him. They had a lot of transfers going out, especially on that defensive line. You had Jack Sullivan to USC, Branson Dean to Miami, both guys we talked about in previous episodes. And then Lawrence Johnson goes to Auburn with Hugh Freeze. And you got to replace those 3 guys. Now, they did that in the portal. They got some guys that are not bad replacements, but for Ryan Walters, defensive guy, to lose his core defensive lineman is pretty tough to see. And then obviously Brady Allen transferred, quarterback going to Louisville with Jeff Brom. And who knows what he would have been. He's a young guy, but he was a highly rated recruit for Purdue. It was a big win when they got him. And they're replacing him with Hudson Card. And all I can say about Hudson Card is, man, he's a fine, serviceable quarterback. Big Ten West in past years, maybe that does it for you, but not this year. I think you're going to see an elevated level of coaching in the Big Ten West, an elevated level of quarterback play in the Big Ten West. And you got to look at their schedule, and their over-under is 5.5 right now. You got to find 6 wins on that. You got to make a bowl game, and you're looking. They're out of conference schedules, no cupcake either. Right? They get Fresno State. It's their group of 5 program, who, we love Fresno State out there in the West Coast. They bring it to whoever they play every week. Virginia Tech, at Virginia Tech. Enter Sandman. Who knows? Hopefully our guy, Brent Pry, right?
Brent Pry
gets their year 2 going for them. And then Syracuse. I know they lost a lot of talent there. But they do still have what's his guy, Garrett Shredder, coming back for quarterback. And I think Syracuse beat Purdue last year, I want to say. Now, it was in the Carrier Dome.
They did. It wasn't the Carrier Dome. It's a lot of late shenanigans in that game.
Yeah.
Charlie Jones had a.
But that's what I'm saying. Charlie Jones. Look, yeah, we'll talk to NFL draft. I skipped over that real quick. Aiden O'Connell gone. Charlie Jones gone. Payne Durham gone. Corey Trice gone. Those are 4 high-level players that were impact players for your team, leaders, all dipped. And then in conference, their crossover games. Oh, Michigan, Ohio State, and then Indiana, who's a rivalry game. So you never know with that game. I just find it hard to find 6 wins with that schedule.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I just think a lot of those losses were just so devastating. So devastating. I think they were carried on that team by a couple of elite talents on that team. Um, and obviously a great coach. Jeff Brom's a fantastic coach. He did a lot with that program. We have yet to see what Ryan Walters is going to do there. I think there's just so much uncertainty, so much uncertainty. So he wasn't on my list for the under, but I definitely see what you're saying. It's a tough schedule. It's a gauntlet, and for a first year coach to get that and lose a lot of guys, that's hard. That's hard. But good for Ryan Walters. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I don't know it. I know you have your opinions on Ryan Walters, but I think he's pretty decent. I'm rooting for the guy. I'm rooting for the guy, but you might be right about this under thing first year one. So, all right, here we go. Who's my sleepy snoozer? Going back to G5. Going back to G5. But instead of Conference USA, what if I told you, Chris, that there's a team that was in the Conference USA? They went 5-7 these last 2 years. They're not talented. Okay. Then they move to the American, where they're going to face a tougher schedule. Okay. And what if I told you that over under win totals at 7.5? Okay. And I haven't even told you
it was 7.5.
It's 7.5 right now, and I haven't even told you that their out of conference includes MAC runner-up Ohio, Clemson, and Illinois. Okay, we're talking about FEU. I'm talking about Tom Herman. Now, that's a guy that I think is a pretty decent coach, and I do like some of the guys that they brought in there. Okay, but they didn't bring in enough to completely overhaul this roster. It's not that good. Casey Thompson, who they brought in, who was actually very, very, very good with Tom Herman for the minimal amount of time that he actually got to play for him. I believe he threw like 14 touchdowns or 12 touchdowns in the few games that, or 17 touchdowns, I think, like the few games that he played with Tom Herman as like a reliever or whatever. So he's familiar with Tom Herman and that offense that they're going to run there. But I just think the schedule is too hard. I mean, UTSA, Frank Harris is a very good quarterback there. UAB, Trent Dilfer, question mark? Tulane, who they get at home, but they just might be too good this year. I think East Carolina might be pretty decent this year. They return a lot of talent other than like running back and quarterback, and their center who went to Auburn. I still think they could be pretty good. Tulsa's not a guarantee win. I find it very, very hard to find 8 wins. Now it is juiced to the under at 7.5, but I think like I just don't see any way they're getting over 7.5 wins. I think it might be an underwhelming first year, but I do believe in Tom Herman. I do think that that's a pretty decent school to be at. We saw what Lane Kiffin did there for a couple years. Had a couple guys drafted there. I think Casey Thompson, I think he's a better quarterback than he gets credit for. I think he was put in a bad situation at Nebraska. I think he did fine at Texas. Yeah, sure. But let's watch the highlight reels of him overthrowing Xavier Worthy or whatever. Okay. But come on. Was Hudson Card that much better? Was Quinn Ewers last year like that much better? I think all of those guys, Hudson Card, Quinn Ewers, Casey Thompson, I think they're all going to take a step this year. But I just, it's not enough to get 8 wins. There's just no way. There's just no way.
Yeah, I'll say this though. I do think going from the Conference USA to the AAC isn't going to be that big of a deal, especially when you think about what the AAC is now. You lost arguably your 4 of your top teams, right? In terms of, 3 of your top teams: Cincinnati, Houston, UCF. Now SMU still there, and I have a feeling they're just going to run that conference for a couple years.
But here's the reason why it's at 7.5 though, is that they did not draw SMU and they did not draw Memphis on their schedule.
Okay. Yep. And you add 6 teams from Conference USA in the AAC. So half the conference is now going to be, your familiar opponents in the Conference from the Conference USA. I think long term, a Tom Herman and FAU is a good bet. I think this is fine. Because 8's just a lot. It's a lot of wins. I think what Tom Herman did at Florida Atlantic or at Houston was really impressive. Back in the day before he went to Texas. And also, I think what's underrated, and I think you hear about this, I think Josh Pate talks about this sometimes with teams like Troy and South Alabama, why they were so good last year. But in the transfer portal, it's FAU, so they're in Florida, South Florida. And there's crazy talent there that comes in the high school ranks, and they go to Georgia, they go to Texas, or Ohio State comes, gets them, or Bama, and they get buried in the depth chart. They go to the transfer portal, and then they want to come back closer to home, and they end up at a spot like FAU. I think year one, it's hard to do to build a roster like that, but in a couple of years, I think you'd be seeing a really, really talented FAU team.
Right. I
But
mean,
yeah, I think
I get that they ranked 79th in the transfer portal rankings, which isn't horrible but
a new coach.
new coach, it's not bad. But like we've seen some other coaches make bigger moves, so I'm just surprised that Tom Herman didn't try to. Maybe he did try to get more guys, but there's just no way for me. There's just no way. All right. Well, anyways, that's the end of that segment. Thank you, Max. Again, if you want to submit a question, email us at theredshirtsophomore@gmail.com. We love getting to these questions, and we've had nothing but good ones so far. So, fantastic work, Max. All right. Now, let's get into the draft. Fantasy. All right. This is how it works. Standard fantasy scoring. Okay. Christopher and I, we're going to draft one quarterback each from a conference. We might talk about some sleepers here or there for every conference. But then also we're going to have one alternate for Conference US, or sorry, not Conference USA. We might be taking some, that might be a spoiler alert. That might be a spoiler alert. I just really hope Christopher doesn't take this guy. But standard fantasy scoring rushing counts as well. So at the end of the year, we're going to tally these up and see who won. We're going to see who won. So let's see. How about I start? I'll start.
I'm good with that.
I let you start the coaches draft. I'm gonna rip this one off. In the SEC. The SEC, it's not as good a quarterback as it was last year. It really is not. There's some guys that you could look at, like in terms of like pure offensive firepower. In terms of the offense that they're running in, you could look at a guy like Joe Milton and be very, very happy with taking him. But I can't keep my eyes off Carson Beck. I can't do it. Give me Carson Beck. The first quarterback. I mean, we saw Stetson Bennett perform in this offense. Now, obviously, Todd Monken is not there anymore. I get that, and that's a huge loss. But they're more talented on the offensive side of the ball than they were last year. And that defense also might arguably be just as talented. They lost Bear Alexander and they lost Jalen Carter. Okay, sure. In the interior, they're still confident with some guys that they got there. They lost some leaders on that defense as well, but their secondary is still good. Okay, they still have a lot of talent on that Georgia defense. They're putting that offense in good positions to score. I could see Carson Beck, maybe throwing for 3,300 yards, but having 38 touchdowns. I could definitely see that happen. I think Dominic Lovick at receiver was a great get. I think they're good. The loss of A.D. Mitchell was not as bad as people think because he didn't play. He was hurt. So I know that this is not necessarily chalk because I'm not a chalk guy, but I just really like Carson Beck this year. And you know what? He hasn't won the job yet, but come on, he's won the job. Let's be real.
He has. And to be honest, I didn't even think about going Carson Beck. And you did a pretty good job of, giving your side of the opinion why you chose him. And I think it's really interesting. Their offense is so talented, like surrounding or him is crazy. Brock Bowers, is gonna you do a tight end screen to him and he's gonna go for 60 yards. And it'll be a touchdown or whatever it is, So I think it's interesting. Todd Monken, like you said, is a big loss. I think they're gonna hurt with that. But yeah, and this year though, I think their defense still will be good, but their offense is gonna have to score more, I think, than it did last year. I know we keep saying that with these Georgia defenses, and they keep continuing to be elite, but I think they're gonna put some more more load on Carson Beck's shoulders.
I agree. Give me your pick.
I can't deny KJ Jefferson. He's just elite athlete. Okay. You're going to have the offense. You're going to have the throwing stats and the rushing stats, especially the goal line. I mean, he's huge. He's going to have those quarterback sneaks and those quarterback powers, at the goal line, giving them an extra blocker to do. And then also, I think the loss of Kendall Briles is going to help him because I think in year 2, we saw him kind of regress a little bit. And he's going to be healthy, hopefully. To start the year, he'll be healthy. And I think Arkansas, I believe in them. I think they're going to take a step this year that they should have taken last year, but they'll be healthy this year and be able to do that.
All right. I think that's a very good pick. KJ Jefferson is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the SEC to watch just because of how much of an impact he does in everything. He literally does everything. he's unbelievable. But hopefully he stays healthy. He didn't necessarily last year. I think he can be really, really good. I think that's a good pick. Guy that wasn't necessarily on my draft board that we could be talking about next year in this position. Look, I'm a Texas A&M guy, Hunter Weigman. I mean, he showed last 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 800 yards in 4 games. Some of those numbers are skewed a little bit. The Auburn game, the weather was not so great. UMass game, the weather was horrendous. But in the 2 games that we really saw him like fully play against an SEC team as a starter, with all the guys around, not a Moose Muhammad suspended, against Auburn. We had all this talent, right? You're looking at LSU game, he threw 4 touchdowns. Ole Miss, he threw 4 touchdowns. He looked really good in those games. Now he struggled a lot with like those short and intermediate routes, which can be fixed. That's an offseason you fix, just getting your quarterback comfortable back there. He's a true freshman, for God's sake. His deep ball looked fantastic at times. Now you're not going to see a super refined deep ball in college. You're going to see a couple players, with that kind of talent, but I think his receiving talent this year is really, really good. It'll be better this year than I think it will be next year. I think he's going to lose some guys. But their offensive line entirely comes back. I think he could be really good, but he could also not be very good because Jimbo tends to ruin quarterbacks in the last, 6 years.
What's crazy is they still haven't named him starter. And I don't know why. What is the upside? Because everyone knows it is. The locker room knows it is. They need to know. And I think it would do him a lot of benefits to have that confidence from your coach. Now, ultimately, he should win the job, and it'll be all mute point by the end of that Labor Day weekend. But I like Connor Weigman. I got to see him in person at the LSU game. He was incredible. I think I love his legs, his mobility that he has gives him another threat to that offense that's important in Jimbo's offense. And I think having continuity at the O-line, you're going to have this year. First time since 2020, and you saw an elite offensive line group then, and Kellen Mond put up great numbers. And that wide receiver core, Evan Stewart, Moose Muhammad, Noah Thomas playing well. They got that transfer from Kentucky. They just got that speedster, track star guy. You got a couple of tight ends that
I would have Nia Smith coming back.
I forgot about him in the slot, yeah. And then your running backs, now last year you had A-Chain, so you could just hand the ball to him. But even though they didn't, I get he's not a bell cow guy, but they still have stable running backs that they like to use. This year, I like the running back room, but the focus is going to be built around Connor Weigman, or it should be. And you hope that Bobby Petrino can bring the best out of him,
Yeah, any guys that you were looking at that you didn't necessarily draft, or maybe thinking about drafting next year?
AJ Swan, Vanderbilt.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Write that one down.
He was a true freshman last year at Vanderbilt. Okay, we saw that. If you're a quarterback coming to Vanderbilt, probably not going to be ready to start from the jump physically and mentally. But they got him in the recruiting class, and I was impressed every time I saw him. Obviously, he made a bunch of freshman mistakes, but I think he's only going to get better this year. And the main reason for that is continuity at the offensive coordinator position. Joe Lynch was promoted last season, and he'll be around for a second year as offensive coordinator. He's a veterans quarterback coach, and back in the day, he was a pretty good quarterback himself, and I think he's going to bring a lot out of AJ Swan because this is his first year as offensive coordinator with Swan. So I think having a full offseason with each other to work and to communicate and get better chemistry, you'll see a lot of improvements from that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like him a lot. I do like him a lot. All right, well, moving on to the Big 12. Okay, so I took Carson Beck. Christopher took KJ Jefferson. Big 12. I'm gonna let you take this one. What do you got for us? First pick. There's a couple guys here that I think are worth taking.
Yeah, and the Big 12 I like a lot because of the talent. There's a lot of good. You got a lot of good quarterbacks there. You got Dylan Gabriel, Quinn Ewers coming back. Hopefully, you're going to see progression from him. But the guy I like and that I'm most interested in is Will Howard at Kansas State.
I love Will Howard.
Yep, and yes, he filled in for Adrian Martinez when Martinez went down, and that offense was supposed to be built around him, right? Martinez in the offseason, they went out and they got him. But then, and it was supposed to be a redshirt season for Will Howard because he struggled a couple years before that. And they wanted to just reset, go see how, a veteran college football quarterback does and plays. And he came in, and I thought he was really impressive, really, really impressive, especially down the stretch when they got hot. They beat Oklahoma State. They put up 48 points against them. Now that was Oklahoma State team trending down and Kansas State was trending up. But anyways, Baylor against Dave Aranda, they put up 31 points. West Virginia, I know everyone can score on them, but they put up 48. And then Kansas, a rivalry game, they put up 47, and they beat TCU in that Sugar Bowl. He's 6'5", 235. He's a big dude. I think he's going to climb up some draft boards this year. I know the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy put something out about him that they like him a lot too. I love his makeup too. I think he's a battler. I'm rooting for him, and I think he's going to have a big time year. Him and Chris Kleiman,
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a fantastic player. I love watching him play. So that's a good pick. Not where I was going with though. I thought you mentioned Quinn Ewers, you mentioned Dylan Gabriel. I thought you were going somewhere else, and I was gonna be so mad. Give me, for fantasy purposes, Jalen Daniels from Kansas.
Yeah.
He was fantastic for Kansas. He was putting up numbers. People are forgetting that before he got hurt in that TCU game, he was a legitimate Heisman candidate for Lance Leipold there at Kansas. He was fantastic in 9 games, 18 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions with 2,000 yards. But he also tacked on 7 rushing touchdowns for 400 yards. And he just, they had an explosive run game, right? And hopefully, it's a little bit more consistent next year rather than just your 60-yarders and then you're getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage. So hopefully they're a little bit more explosive. But if they are going to be explosive, he's going to be involved in it. So I really, really like him as a player. Not necessarily as an NFL talent. But here's the thing, too. They returned 91% of their offensive production from last year. Wow. That is a staggeringly large number. And we know that they were a fantastic offense. They were a top 25 offense last year, easily. Doesn't matter what metric you look at. So I'm very high on him. I'm going to take Jalen Daniels as my quarterback for the Big 12 fantasy draft.
I don't hate that fantasy wise. The reason that scared me away from him was his injury history last year.
Yeah.
And the fact that, let's say he goes down, right? And you got our buddy, Jason Bean, coming in and he gets hot and then you can't take the ball away from him. So, Jalen Daniels, obviously an electric player. I love when he's healthy. I love watching Kansas football last year. They almost beat TCU, by the way, until he went down. Although Jason Bean was actually really good in that game too. But I think that's a fun pick. I think it's a good pick, fantasy upside wise. But the injuries, scared me away from him.
Yeah, I get it. A guy that I was never, ever going to draft, but I can only be curious about, and I still don't know why he transferred there, Chance Nolan. Chance Nolan come from Oregon State, going to TCU. I'm like, Chandler Morris at times has looked good, but he's also looked very, very bad. I know Chandler Morris is Sonny Dykes' guy. He started there before even Max Duggan won the job after Chandler Morris came out of that Colorado game. Max Duggan came in the second half, and they just put up numbers. They lost a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball, but I'm just very interested. I'm just very, very interested in Chance Nolan. I don't know why. He was not fantastic last year, right? He was plagued with injuries, right? But year before that, 2021, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He was serviceable without any talent over there at Oregon State. So that's just a guy that I'm just going to be, some situation I'm going to be monitoring. Never would have drafted him. I'm just going to be monitoring. That's all I'm going to say.
What's crazy is that's interesting. Okay, that's a person to be monitored for sure. But my sleeper was going to be Chandler Morris, ironically, but I'll go in a different direction. I'll say a few quick words about Chandler Morris. I can't get out of my mind that he won the job before Max Duggan did, and he got hurt. It wasn't like he was benched. He got hurt, and they rode the hot hand with Max Duggan. And it was a new system coming in. It was, jeez Louise, how am I forgetting the coach there?
Sonny Dykes.
Wow. Sorry, Sonny Dykes. You deserve better than that. But I just can't help but think that he's going to have a good year. And I hope his confidence isn't too hurt. But I think it should be elevated with how the success Max Duggan had and that success he knows he can have in that offense. Instead, I'll go in another direction. I'll go Hunter Deckers real quick. at Iowa State. I know we're high-ish on Iowa State. The problem is, again, interceptions. Isn't touchdown interception ratio. Only had 19 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. He did throw for 3,000 yards though, and the I don't know. I've been kind of waiting for his breakout year, and I'm hoping I've been a year too early, year or 2 years early, and I'm hoping. I think this is the year for him to pop off.
Yeah, I like him a lot as a player. At times he's a little erratic, but he's shown some potential. They should have won some. They were in some games, not because of play calling, that's for sure, but because he made some timely throws. But then again, up and down player. I like that though. Let's move on to the ACC. I'm going to take the ACC. And I don't think you're going to be upset about this because I think I know who you're going to go with. But I think the obvious one, I think I'm going to regret saying this. It's Drake May. The obvious one is Drake May in the ACC because I'm a little concerned about losing Josh Downs, your best receiver, and I'm worried about Phil Longo going to Wisconsin, losing your offensive coordinator, and I'm worried about that defense not giving a chance for that offense to just take any breaks whatsoever. They're literally going to be Swiss cheese. They're going to have so many holes out there. It's going to be crazy. So, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 4,300 yards, Heisman finalist. I mean, that's a chalk pick right there. So I'm gonna stick with that.
Yeah, to be honest, I was not gonna go Drake May. I was gonna go Jordan Travis.
Yep. I see. I knew it.
Yeah, I think what you saw progression from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, especially that Oklahoma game. He got really, really good, and he started figuring it out. You could see the game slowing down for him. I love what they did this offseason for him. Right, they still have Johnny Wilson, who's that freak in nature, 6'7" wide receiver. That's obviously gonna be a nightmare to cover.
Brick
but they
hands,
also brought in,
but he's still a problem. He's still a
problem. Yeah. Keon Coleman, though, from Michigan State, was that big transfer guy they got kind of late in the cycle recently here, and that was a big deal for them. He's gonna be really, real good. And then Jaheim Bell, early in the cycle, they got from South Carolina. Very coveted guy. He's from Georgia, so he's kind of close to Tallahassee. He can play multiple positions for them. Yeah, I'm excited for him. I think he's gonna take a jump, and I think he'll be in that Heisman competition. We'll talk about Heisman's later in the summer, but I think he's gonna be right there.
I agree with you. I can't take. That was my number 2 guy who I would have been totally happy with if you were one and took Drake May.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally happy with.
The ACC to me kind of chalk. 1 and 2 is a tier ahead of everyone else. And the Pac-12, you can kind of say that too, but I think 2 and 3 people have questions about.
I don't know. I think Pac-12 is pretty deep at quarterback, but for ACC, my sleeper, like my number 3 guy, might surprise people, who hasn't technically won the job yet, but he will. I've said this a lot of guys. Brennan Armstrong, man. I can't stop thinking about his year with Virginia 2 years ago with Robert Anae, who he reunites with as his offensive coordinator. I mean, he was 31-10 for 4,400 yards with Robert Anae at Virginia. Okay, he's got a better offensive line. He's got better receivers. I mean, I think he could be a total breakout guy. I'm not saying you should be betting money as like a Heisman long shot, but he is like 125 to 1 if you are looking at that.
Oh, don't bet him, but I'll give you his odds. Okay, I'll give you his odds.
Yeah, don't bet it, but I'm just giving you his odds. So like we're back here in January and I can play this clip and everyone would be like, whoa, this guy's a genius. But yeah, that's my sleeper.
I love that. I mean, we've been talking about Brennan Armstrong since he transferred and Robert Anae was there. I'm excited for him. He's a lefty, right? I think he spins the ball he's so fun to watch when he spins the ball.
Slinger.
Yeah. My guy I'm gonna go with is I'm just gonna say the Louisville quarterback, with Jeff Brom.
whoever it is.
It should be Jack Plummer, I think. He's older than Brady Allen, and both those guys were actually on the Purdue roster at some point. They both reunited with Jeff Brom, like we said. But I'm gonna pretty much stick to Jack Plummer because that's who we know about. in college football. Brady Allen, we know, is just a big time recruit. But Jake Plummer had success at Purdue, kind of. He kind of got beat out by Aiden O'Connell. They ran a 2 quarterback system there for a little bit, and then O'Connell ended up winning it out because he kind of stayed healthy. Jake Plummer couldn't stay healthy and ended up losing job transferring to Cal. Had a good year there, I think. 3,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 9 interception at Cal. And then as soon as he entered the portal, and Jeff Brown was at Louisville, he wanted him bad. He brought him in right away. I think that means something. I think he could have a big time year with Louisville, and I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, I'm too. I'm too. I think that's pretty good. All right, let's move on to the Pac-12, and you get the pick. So I wonder who it's gonna be.
Yeah, I think you'd be foolish to not say Caleb Williams. I mean, USC won the Heisman last year. Is going to be #1 draft pick. There's not a ton to say that you guys don't already know about Caleb Wilson. He's obviously got crazy talent around him. Lincoln Riley, good O-line. They're going to put up points. He's going to put up numbers again. He'll be right in that Heisman conversation. But he'll probably won't win it because you can't win it twice in a row for whatever reason. College football is weird about that. But yeah, I think
Well,
Caleb
sorry.
Wilson's the guy.
For clarification, voters are weird like that.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, Heisman voters, that's another segment.
Yeah,
Terrible.
we don't. Yeah, we don't.
It's not even that they get the wrong. I'm sorry, I went on a tangent. Not even that they get the top guy wrong, because they do that. They do a pretty good job of that. Because it's pretty cut and clear most years, but it's who they bring with them to New York is always just a travesty. But and I'll get off my soapbox and let you pick your pick.
Yeah, give me Michael Penix. I talked about him. You talked about him with Kalen DeBoer. He's just fantastic. 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 4,600 yards. This dude was slinging the rock. For a while, he led the country in passing yards. He was right up there, I think, in the top 5. He just puts up stats, and he returns both of his stud receivers, Jalen McMillan and Roma Dunze. I believe that's how you say it. We botch names on the show all the time, so don't be surprised if you hear a name as a Washington fan or, you know, uh, I botched a Javante John Baptiste the other day for Notre Dame twice. Not only did I accidentally say he was medically redshirt or medically retired, I said that. I think I said Javante Jayon Baptiste. I don't know what I was reading, but anyways, he's a dog. I don't think I got to say anything else. I think he's like 5th or 6th in the Heisman odds this year. I mean, he's gonna put up numbers, and hopefully he can keep up with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think this is where the fun begins because, like you said earlier, to me that was my second pick. I thought those two were a tier ahead of Bo Nix, who was right in that second tier. I think. I think this is where it gets fun, the sleeper guys, because they're depth there. I'm gonna go Jaden DeLora from Arizona.
I love that pick. I love that sleeper pick.
3,600 yards at Arizona last year. 25 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, good quarterback rating. Got better as the year going on. He was only a sophomore last year.
Yeah, he was
So
a little
this is his third
inconsistent.
year.
He's a little inconsistent, but he was fine.
Yeah. Put up 400 yards against Michael Penix at Washington. Put up 380 against Caleb Williams at USC. 315 at UCLA with DTR back there. So I think it's fun. I love watching Arizona. We talked about them before, but I think he's gonna have a good year.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stay right in that state with my sleeper, and I'm gonna say whoever wins the Arizona State job, because it could actually be 4 or 5 guys. And you laugh, but Kenny Dillingham, he revived Bo Nix. He looked like a new person. I'm gonna botch this name, Trent Bourget. I think it's Bourget. Trent Bourget. Oh, gosh, I've been reading his name in articles, and I haven't heard anyone in a video actually talk about him or to see how it was actually pronounced. So I'm gonna go with Trent Bourget. That's how it's pronounced. Trent Bourget. If you want to tell me otherwise, let me know. Or Drew Pine, who transferred from Notre Dame, who it's not that good, but we've seen Kenny Dillingham revive guys, right? But it might not even be him as a second guy. Jaden Rashada, highly rated quarterback. We talked about him. He was originally committed to Florida. Now he's over at Arizona State. Apparently, he's looked really good in spring ball. I think it's going to be Trenton Bourget. If I had to guess, because he looked really good in that spring game. I'm a fan. Has a pretty decent deep ball from what I could see in my limited time watching him. But This is just a Kenny Dillingham kind of pick, I think. So yeah, that's it for me. State of Arizona. Christopher goes Jacob or Jane Delora, and I go Trent Bourget. How about that? Who would have thought? Sleeper Pac-12 quarterbacks. All right. Next, we move on to the Big Ten. This is CD specialty, but too bad I have the first pick. And I'm going to go with the Illinois native, J.J. McCarthy. For obvious reasons. I mean, he's one of the top favorites to win the Heisman. He keeps getting better. It feels like in every game he plays. He has talent around him. He's going to have a decent offensive line. He's going to have a fantastic run game. The only reason you would knock this is like if they're up in too many games with that absolute cheddar cheese schedule that they got. Except of course Minnesota on the road. That's a tough game, obviously.
Thank you.
But Blake Corum, I mean, and Donovan Edwards, I mean, they might just take over games, and we might not see J.J. McCarthy put up those numbers. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he's a fantastic quarterback, very athletic. So that's gonna be my pick out of the Big Ten. I think that's a safe pick.
Yeah, I think he's the most known at quarterback in the Big Ten. I think you're gonna have a lot of interesting quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and we'll get to that eventually. We get to conference breakdowns, but yeah, JJ McCarthy. The note I had on him was, I love him as a quarterback, a really good athlete, like you said, but those two running backs are gonna hinder him in the red zone, and then even like you saw Donovan Edwards can just like that gone for 70 yards, and that's gonna hinder his stats. But I think that was a good pick. That was my number one. Number two, and this is where you get into some controversy in the Big Ten. I'm gonna say Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin.
Wow, that's very interesting pick.
Yeah,
Explain.
and as a Minnesota fan, I hate saying that, and I hate the thought that Wisconsin might have a good quarterback because of what the only reason we beaten them was because of Graham Mertz. Okay, let's be honest. But I think Phil Longo was the most underrated hire. Nobody talks about that. Nobody's talking about that. Well, he's the offense coordinator for Wisconsin now. He was at North Carolina, and we saw what he did with Drake May, and even with the quarterback before that, who's in the NFL now for the Washington football team. Who's that? Who was
Sam
that?
Howell. Sam Howell.
Sam Howell. Thank you. Sorry, Tanner Mordecai last year underratedly top 8 in touchdowns. He had 33 in college football, 3,500 yards, only 10 interceptions. Fifth year senior, I think for Wisconsin now, transferred from SMU. Level of competition will go up for him, but I think Phil Longo and that new air raid system at Wisconsin, I think he's got a chance to pop off for a lot of touchdowns and yards.
Yeah, I think they upgraded pretty much almost everywhere on the offensive side of the ball. I have this weird feeling in me that like, well, one, we saw the spring game. Tanner Mordecai did not look fantastic in that. But the other thing, and that's just kinks. I mean, he's gonna work. That's gonna be ironed out by October. But the thing I can't get over is just like like the Big Ten West. Like you get those teams up north, Minnesota, Wisconsin. It's really, really hard to throw the ball in late November in that kind of weather. It just is. We saw. I mean, that snowstorm at Northwestern, Ohio State. They struggled against a bad Northwestern team. They didn't even win a game in the United States of America last year. They didn't. And Ohio State, guys, CJ Stroud, second overall draft pick. Marvin Harrison Jr. He'll be a top 5 draft pick. Jackson Smith and Jigba was a first round draft pick. Igbuka might be a first round draft pick this upcoming year. Trayvon Henderson, Mayan Williams. I mean, they had loaded talent on offense, and they couldn't do anything. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't do it. And that snowstorm in Michigan, CJ Stroud had a tough time throwing the ball 2 years ago when they lost to Michigan over there. So I just think we'll see how Phil Longo does. I just hope that they're still going to keep some of that identity, being able to run the ball. And if they're able to do that, I think they could be a weapon on offense. I like Tanner Mordecai at SMU. This is not Tanner Mordecai's slander. Was spooked by the spring game, but I just want to see that how that's going to work before I put my chips in on Tanner Mordecai. He would have been like a sleeper of mine, like a guy that I wasn't looking at necessarily, but like I could definitely see popping off. But I mean, a sleeper guy that I kind of want to look at, Luke Altmaier. Is that a crazy one to say? And there's his sleeper. Yep. I see. I liked him at Ole Miss. He didn't really show a lot in the game. He played against Baylor in a bowl game when Matt Corral went down. I thought he was fine. He lost the job out to Jackson Dart, which isn't saying a whole lot, which kind of leaves you some question marks there. But I mean, what was his name? We just talked about in the last episode. Serviceable quarterback this past year. Transferred from Syracuse.
Oh, Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito. So I think he can be fine. I don't think he's going to put up a ton of numbers, but don't be surprised if he looks really good this year.
Well, I think this year they're gonna have more pressure on the quarterback than they did last year. And Tommy DeVito was really, really efficient for Brett Bielema and that staff. And they did a good job of getting the best out of him, which I hope they do for Luke Altmaier. But they also had top 10 defense. They had the running back there, Chase Brown, and so I think this year they're gonna be playing from behind a little bit more, and they're gonna have to push the ball. So I think he could have a good. That was the reason why I was gonna have him as my sleeper. But I guess if you twist my arm, I'll talk about Adrian Kaliakmanis. Twist my arm. Okay, I wrote up something because I knew just in case I had to. To me, the biggest thing for him is those last two games he played. At Wisconsin had 300 yards and a win, and then Syracuse in a bowl game was 7 for 9, 80 yards, and had a beautiful deep out to Lemeke Brockington, and that's where he got hurt. Ankle sprain. It was on third down, but he was healthy throughout spring ball. Got a lot of reps as the first team quarterback. He's elite arm talent that Minnesota hasn't seen, and you can tell that they're changing their offensive philosophy. They will not throw the ball 35 times a game. They never will under PJ Fleck, but they're not going to be right there with the service academies and running the ball. No Mo Abraham, no road graders up front, those interior guys. You can see that they sold that vision to transfer wide receivers, namely Elijah Spencer and Corey Crooms, that can come in and play really, really well for them really quickly. And then Brevin Spanford, I think, is the best tight end in the Big Ten, 6'7", 270, really good athlete. And their tackles also offensively, their offensive tackles are better suited for pass pro this year than they were last year. So yeah, I'm excited for them. New coach, new scheme, offensive coordinators. So I'm excited for him. As a Minnesota fan, maybe not this year in 2023, but 2024, you're gonna hear him in some NFL draft conversations, I think.
All right, nice. Well, so we picked our top or our Power 5 teams. My team is looking like Carson Beck, Jalen Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, and JJ McCarthy. I think that's a stellar squad. And CD's team's looking like KJ Jefferson, Will Howard, Jordan Travis, Caleb Williams, Tanner Mordecai. Also a pretty solid squad. So now lastly, we're gonna take a G5 group of 5 alternate, right? In case any one of our guys gets hurt, right? We can just plug and play this guy in spot for any one of these guys. I think it'd be the rules should probably be like if they play in less than 10 games or 11 games, you can sub that guy in for whoever. But I guess it's your turn to go first. And I know exactly who you're going to take because he is a stud.
Yeah. We love the group of 5, and you love to see – you're going to see some big-time numbers in the group of 5, especially with some air raid systems and quarterbacks that, and quarterback-friendly schemes. I'm going to take Austin Reed, Western Kentucky.
Yep.
I mean, what can I say? First of all, Bailey Zapp, we saw what he did at Western Kentucky. And then he was 40-11 touchdown to interception ratio, 4,700 yards. And yes, they lost their offensive coordinator. He went to was it Texas Tech?
Yep. Well,
I think so. Or Oregon. No.
Co-offensive coordinator went to Texas Tech.
Okay, so their new OC is Drew Hollingshed. And he was part of that Mike Leach tree. He spent 3 seasons at Mississippi State, and then has been mentored by Mike Leach since all the way to 2016, back at Washington State. And before that, he was at Texas A&M Commerce, and he was the 2014. He was the quarterbacks coach, and they put up 54 points a game. So I think he's a quarterback guru. Mike Leach has that influence on him, so they're going to throw the ball a ton. And then also players on the field returning. the leading wide receiver, Malachi Corley, 1,200 yards last year. I'm excited to see what Austin Reed does this year with Western Kentucky.
Yep. Correction though. Offensive coordinator went to Washington State. Boy, Jake Dicker.
That's
He was
right.
technically a co-offensive coordinator. Ben Arbuckle's his name. Sorry, wanted to clarify that. But I think that's your look. If you were taking like an entire fantasy draft of every quarterback in college football, Austin Reed is legitimately a top 5 quarterback in fantasy aspect. I mean, this dude slings the rock. They don't run the ball. He's got a fantastic receiving core. I mean, they're all back. I mean, he is going to put up numbers. So it'll be scary, honestly, if a guy like Tanner Mordecai goes down and you get to slide in Austin Reed. That would be crazy. That would be crazy. So I hope that doesn't happen. My alternate. This is more of a sleeper than an alternate, but I think he's so good if you watch him play. His name's Taylon Green, and he plays for Boise State. He is 6'6", 215. In high school, he was a track athlete too. Long jump, triple jump. He's explosive. He's got elite arm talent. Okay. He's not very refined on his deep ball, but legitimately, if he refines his deep ball, you're actually going to be like, he's going to be a late riser on draft boards. If not this year with this deep quarterback draft, then it's next year. You're going to hear his name on NFL draft day. You're going to. He's an elite talent. I mean, he ran a 4.64 laser time, 40. Fantastic for someone that size. Josh Allen, for example, ran a 4.74. Okay. So you're looking at a guy that, not saying is the arm talent of Josh Allen, but he has the build and makeup of Josh Allen. He only threw 14 touchdowns in 13 games. That's not what I'm concerned about. Okay. Like, he's going to get better. He's going to work out his kinks. Boise State loves him. They're so high on him. They're so glad that they got him to stay this past year. This dude is an athlete. And most importantly, he is a redshirt sophomore. And we love redshirt sophomores on this show. I mean, look, they were top 60 rated offensive efficiently. Sorry, they were rated top 60 in offensive efficiency last season. And that has a lot to do with strength of schedule. They lost some games pretty ugly. They lost to Oregon State pretty bad, but that was a good defense. But if you watch some of this against Oregon State, you see him scramble out for a 74-yard touchdown, and you just see him blaze by their DBs, blaze by them. And he's 6'6", 250. He's very good. He has no problem with those intermediate routes either. I mean, he sees over the offensive line great. He's diamond guys. I mean, they have something special over there at Boise State, and I think you could really see him put up some numbers this year. Well, I really do because I just drafted him. So Taylon Green's his name. Boise State is the game. Yeah. I mean, were there any other guys? That. Were there any other guys you were looking at G5 wise? Maybe Frank Harris or Michael Pratt.
Yeah, I like Frank Harris, UTSA going to the AAC. Will be interesting. He's been successful there. He was there successful that last year. UTSA has been pretty good for the past couple of years. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping someone from the MAC steps up, and so we can watch him on Tuesday and Wednesday nights.
Oh yeah,
just light it up. So we'll see though. The G5 though you mentioned him. I love my Austin Reed, and now he was the surefire #1 pick. But Taylon Green, I was surprised. I didn't think you were gonna take him, but that's an incredible foresight for you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anticipating, him having to play, but for my lineup, but I just think it'd be cool to be right about something like that. Other guys I was thinking about taking, Michael Pratt for Tulane. He was very good. The guy I think people should really watch out for, Carter Bradley, playing for South Alabama. Potentially a legit NFL talent. We're not talking about high rounds, right? We're talking about, he's a day 3 guy, but he has the arm talents. He's shown flashes. I really like him. Jim Nagy has a great write-up on him. If you guys want to check that out, about the Senior Bowl. He's very good. He's 28 and 12 touchdown interception ratio with 3,300 yards in South Alabama. And I love watching Sunbelt football. I really do. I think he could be really good. Another guy last guy I want to mention that I would have also called out as a sleeper. Technically hasn't gotten the job yet. A lot of these guys. Mikey Keene from Fresno State transferred from UCF. Lost a job out to John Rice Plumlee over there with Gus Malzahn. He's a good get for UCF at the time. They really liked him, and he's played in 15 games for them. Fun fact: 23-7 touchdown to interception ratio with 2,400 yards. He plays efficient football. And Jeff Tedford is a fantastic coach there, right? I mean, 3 of his 4 years, I think he's won 7 conference games out there. And the 1 year that they didn't, he was battling with health issues and he stepped down. And then that's when Kalen DeBoer took over, and then he left. And then now Jeff Tedford's back. And we saw what Jay Kaner was able to do last year when they went on a tear at the end of the season. I think Mikey Keene could be really good there. Now, Logan Fife made a good impression out there on the West Coast, but I still think Mikey gets the job. And, well, he gets the job because he is also a red shirt sophomore. So, those are my guys. That were some also other guys that I was thinking about taking. But, I mean, Austin Reed is just a clear-cut number one.
Yeah, real quick, though, I think we can't do a group of 5 quarterback segment without mentioning Grayson McCall, even though we talked about him earlier.
Yep.
With Jamie Chadwell going to Liberty, and obviously he loses head coach, but he was 24-2 touchdown to interception ratio last year. Had 6 more touchdowns on the ground. Didn't quite run as much as he did his freshman year or his redshirt freshman year at in 2020, but I think he's gonna add on another good year. You know, he's not gonna have those interceptions, and maybe they open it up for him a little bit more his senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, fantastic. So, Christopher's alternate was Austin Reed, and my alternate was Halen Green. Remember that name, guys. Just remember that name. That's all I'm going to say. When you're watching those Mountain West games late at night and you're watching Boise State, just remember, I think that guy in the Redshirt Sophomore Podcast was talking about that guy, Halen Green. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. That's all we got time for today. Make sure to check us out on everywhere: Spotify, YouTube, Twitter. Our Twitter's the Redshirt Soft, just at the Redshirt Soft. Be sure to check us out.
Yeah, for our YouTube crowd, please hit that bell for notifications for when we post. Should be 3 times a week, and then let us know what you think in the comments. Give us your sleepers and give me your group of 5 teams. Maybe some people we missed, we didn't talk about, we should talk about or look at for this year. So yeah.
Yeah, because honestly, genuinely, there's people that we missed. There's actually so many college football players, quarterbacks specifically, that could be really good. Guys that we haven't even heard of that we're going to hear about. We're going to hear Mel Kiper talk about, or bad Mel Kiper talk about. So, all right. Anyways, thank you guys. Yeah, we'll see you next time.